There it is. Okay, so this is our first ever fireside chat for the FTCA. This is a members only event. This defies introduction. There's no fanfare to these things. It's just me and Gregg Friedman shooting the shit. Cussing can happen. It probably will happen. It looks like Greg's on his porch in his rocking chair doing the old man thing. I never I never thought you actually made it home. What is your travel schedule like?
I'm home more during the week than most guys are.
Yeah.
So I usually leave on a Friday morning, come back on a Sunday night, and I'll probably do about 25 to 30 events a year. So I've already done, I think, 9. And then I've got one more next week, this coming weekend in Davenport, and then I'm actually shutting down until FTCA so I can work on some stuff.
Yeah.
And then I kick it up again at the end of June, and then I kill myself until the end of the year.
What
about 1,000 miles a year?
That is crazy, man.
Yeah.
What got you into that sort of thing? Oh, wait, you told me about that in the podcast. You stood up at one point and you were the funniest guy in the room.
Yeah, right. At this point, though, it's become a mission for me because I just get sad. I get weepy when I see some of the shit that's going on in our profession. And I think we are so much better than that. And we could be so much more than we are as a profession right now. And I figure, you know what? Okay, who's going to do it? How are we going to do this? And I'm just one guy.
Yeah.
But if I could get my message out there, if I could get everybody just communicating better, which is my whole thing, I think we have a shot of doing this. And every now and then people in the group get all pissy about, tours and oh you're doing a thing at a tour thing. I'm like fuck you. I'll speak for the tours all day. I said I love doing that because you know what? If I could get them documenting better, maybe something good comes from that. So
that's a good point.
And this is going to be the rest of my career, trying to just drag the profession up, and the more people I get helping me drag them up, I think we can do it.
What it's sort of like, a lot of these guys, I think it's endemic to the profession itself. They're like endemic. They hope there's like a messiah, for lack of better words, They hope one guy shows up and one guy has all the answers for them. And what I've tried to tell them is you're not going to find all these answers in one guy. You're going to find, like we're seeing when we put together this Forward KC thing, is you're going to find a documentation guy, and you're going to find a rehab, group, and you're going to find business people, and you're going to find all this other stuff. And you've got to you got to be a big boy. You got to put on your big boy pants and put all the pieces together. And then you've got to figure this shit out on your own.
Do that.
But everyone sort of thinks like one person's going to show up and just make it happen for them. And I get it. It's sort of like positive emotions. What is that saying? It's like positive emotions come in two. I've actually got it pulled up right here. Positive emotions come in two usefully differentiated variants. And this is from Jordan Peterson. There's satisfaction, which we call satisfaction, but it's really satiation. Tells us that we did something good, while hope is an incentive reward and indicates that something pleasurable is on the way. So there's like satisfaction, and then there's hope. And we don't have a whole lot of hope in this profession, but we do try to find all of our little pieces of satisfaction, like, oh, I had a good week this week, or, my website brought in a new patient. There's like all these little tidbits of satisfaction just because there's not enough hope floating around.
I got a new Groupon for $19. So,
My Groupon's doing hot shit right now.
so I think too, though, that a lot of the profession really is, okay, what is that? So you're drinking a Gatorade and I'm drinking.
It's mixed. It's
What?
Gatorade, but it's got some magic stuff inside of it.
So I think a lot of the profession are hoping, they're looking for the ACA to do it, or their state associate to do it. I'm like, ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
I said, it's not gonna happen. The only way this happens is if we, the ones in the field, seeing the patients, doing the stuff, if we decide once and for all. I have a video that I show at the beginning of my seminar now from, do you remember that old movie Network?
Yeah,
And
sure. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
Mad as hell. So that's what I'm like, when are we yet at the point as a profession that we're mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore? And because until we get to that level of passion, I don't think we change. So I'm trying to show everybody, okay, look, the most hated part of practice, I think for most, is the whole documentation thing. So
Right.
If I could make that easier and faster and more palatable, and we can get past that, and if I can get more of us doing that and communicating better, then I feel like, okay, so all right, we could do that, and then we do the next step. And if we could start, like, there's a thread in another group this weekend that I was kind of watching, and they're talking about like a report of findings and do you treat on the first visit? And I'm like, what? And they're going to like practice management firms. I'm like, oh, the whole don't treat on the first visit. You got to bring them in. Oh, I've got to take some time and really look at this and see. I said, come on. If the more patient-centered we are, the more we're like, like I have a patient, if I say, you know what, I think I want to send you for x-rays. I don't want to adjust you yet because I'm not, there might be something, I'd rather wait to do. Is that okay? Or, or I could say, nah, we're good. I don't see any red flags. I don't need to x-ray you right now. We can do that. That's okay. But I'm going to treat you on the first visit. I don't see anything wrong with that. I cringe when we start talking about the whole sales technique. A report of findings should never be a sales pitch. It's a fucking report of findings, and make sure nobody heard
it is
report of findings. It is, you're telling, it's not a sales thing. It's this is what's going on. This is what it is. This is what I can do. I think I can help. Let's start with a 2-week trial of care. This is how much it's going to cost. We're going to reevaluate it 2 weeks to see if we're on the right track or not. Is that okay? But then I see some of these other guys, especially some of the younger guys, doing a 1 or 2 visit care plan. I'm like, what the hell? You must be the Messiah or something. I don't know how that even works. Now that happens sometimes, but I would never tell a patient, oh yeah, I'll get you better. Well,
there are a couple distinct points in there. I mean, you put in between some sort of examination and then treatment, you didn't put a whole day in between, but you did at least put the part that they would want, the patient would want, which is like, put some thought into this.
Yeah.
And here's what we're going to do next. And then, of course, the big part was, is that okay with you?
Yeah.
You ask for permission. Now, some gurus say you do your exam in one room and then you do your quote-unquote ROF in a different room, and then putting them in different rooms says that it's a different process. And I get that. That's all right. Okay, whatever. And some people, of course, do the whole like come back the next day because I got a whole lot of thinking to do about this.
Right. Fuck that.
This is really complicated stuff.
Bring your spouse.
Marion, it's going to be a long road to wellness from here. Well, I'm not here for wellness. I'm here for pain. Well, pain is just a sign that you are way off your track of wellness. And it's like, at least, if you've got one room, do your exam. Say, okay, give me a second to think about what I found on this exam. Tell them what you found on the exam. Tell them what you're going to do next, and then ask if it's okay. And then let's get rolling. And write it down, right?
I think my report of findings is like 3 minutes or less.
Yeah.
It's probably more like a minute or less. I'm padding it to say 3. It sounds bad if I say 3 minutes or less, but it's just, it doesn't have to be a sales pitch like that. And if I treat somebody in the first visit and I schedule them and they call, I had a guy come in last Thursday, And this guy came in. I think I told the story on the site. He come in, holding his neck, and he's saying "fuck" and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, "What the hell did you do?" I don't know. And I told him it might have been from breeze and wind and shit like that on there. So I said, "Let's see what I can do today. Come back on Monday, and then we'll go from there."
It's a long road to wellness from here.
He calls me. He calls my office over the weekend to cancel his appointment, and the message he leaves is, "I don't know what you did, but that's like a miracle." He said, so I said, I'll call to reschedule, but I'm feeling great. I'm like, hey, that's fantastic. He's going to love me forever. And he will call me back when he needs me. And he may need me next time for a few visits and then done. And then eventually he may come in again for a few visits, and he may do that for the next 20 years. I don't know. That's okay. But you've got to be careful, because the doctors that talk about the 1 or 2 visit plan with people, you need a shitload of patience every month to keep your doors open.
There's a difference there. And I think the difference is there are people who are on 1 to 2 visit plans because they don't have any confrontational tolerance at all. Like they know that the person probably needs a 3rd or 4th visit, but they just don't say anything at all.
Yeah.
Versus like, well, okay, so this guy's feeling amazing after visit 1. You over the phone, you ask him a couple questions. He sounds great. Where's it really going to go from there besides a sales pitch for you? You're doing good? You're sleeping good? Yeah, I'm sleeping good. And you can do all your work? Yeah, I'm working. I played golf yesterday. I feel great. What else are you going to do? You know? I mean, most people
don't forget the spouse.
Yeah, right. And it's like, what are you going to do in this situation that doesn't?
Wait, let me show you my chart to wellness.
Yeah, you haven't seen the Merrick that whole thing. You haven't seen the goes up and down.
We have to talk about corrective care.
Yeah, today. Yeah, we haven't had our talk about corrective care yet, and you're going to feel good today, but you'll feel wrong tomorrow. And when you feel wrong, that means me. Whenever you feel bad, think of me.
We're peeling back the layers.
Yeah, it's like an onion. Like an onion.
God, I have all these posters. Does anybody want the posters? I'll sell you some posters.
Use them as a giveaway at the conference.
I'll bring the posters to Forward Kansas City.
That's a lot of shipping, man. It's a lot of shipping. You better have some good graces with the airlines for all the flying you're doing. Oh, you got some Tweety birds outside. How hot is it there?
Oh, I think it was cooler today, like in the 80s today. So I'm on the covered part of the patio.
Very nice. Very nice.
A little cloudy.
What is the main thing you try to get people to walk away from when you do your documentation seminars?
How handsome I am in person. That's really what I try to. I try to get them to think like a doctor, and to believe that what we do has a ton of value, and we need to, the only way that we can tell and show the rest of the world who we are and what we do is by our documentation. That's the only way we can do it. And the way we've been doing that for the last 100 years has been just awful. So that's why we're perceived so poorly by the rest of the free world and not so free world. So by communicating properly, I think we can really elevate the entire profession. And that's really what I'm trying to do. Hey, what's up, man?
What's going on?
Ah, yes.
Hey,
See,
you want a beer?
there we go. Now it's a party.
Just the 2 of you old farts in here talking shit?
It's just talking shit, man. Talking about the kids. He froze up on us. He's trying to be on the move.
Isn't he the tech guy?
Yeah, he's the tech guy, right? Well, that's what the Fireside Chat. I think it's going to work good like that. I think I'm just going to push record and see who shows up.
Yeah,
that party goes from there.
I switched off the Wi-Fi. Do you guys still hear me?
Are you on the run from the police or what?
Probably. They haven't found out for what I did yet, though.
You are going to give somebody a seizure, and I like it. We went from the country ease of Dr. Gregg Friedman to the urban sprawl of Blake Kalkstien driving his fucking car.
And he was released. What's for dinner tonight?
Hey, honey.
What's for dinner tonight?
We are talking documentation at this point, but we were talking about the future of the profession and how to fix it. Does it need fixing? Does it need... I'm saying what most people find in their daily life and practice is satisfaction, and nobody has any hope. And there's two ways to get positive feelings in your life, and that's satisfaction and hope. We have one or two. How do we get the second one?
We don't have hope?
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't have to go hope like we don't have to go hope the Obama hope. We just have to hope that there's a better future for us. We have to hope that the things we do in our practice on a day-to-day basis actually make a difference in people's lives.
How about that?
Did I just said that?
You just said that. Is this being recorded?
Yeah.
Are you holding a microphone?
It's all I got, man.
Are you going to sing?
No. My mic stand is... I have no idea where that damn thing is. I have a mic stand, but I just don't think it fits. Oh, it can fit up here on this bolster here. It doesn't snap onto anything appropriate.
Are you wearing a hoodie?
Yeah, I'm in the basement. It's freezing. It was either this or Panera Bread, like Josh Satterley. And the baby's outside making noise. And I've been relegated to the basement. This kind of comfort. My spouse has relegated me to the basement.
How old is your youngest child?
She's 11 months. Or sorry, 13 months.
Oh, my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
I'm running in to grab the takeout.
Blake's about to have a baby.
What's he gonna order?
Pickup order Mushu Gai Pan.
Yeah, I placed my phone, yeah.
Cream of some young guy.
57.19.
It's a nice place. Hey Greg, how supportive is you? This is a mess. I love it. Greg, how supportive is your spouse of your career?
Oh, she's like the best. She supports it all.
Good. Does she take part at all, or does she just do her own thing?
She has taken part over the years. If I'm thinking of stuff, new stuff, I'll bounce it off.
There it is.
Great. With that said, that's in fact, for anybody who wants to be successful, I would say it takes that one thing. If you're going to have a relationship, get married, all that, choose wisely, my friend.
Yeah,
thing that make you or break you?
We talked about it at one. I don't know if we talked about it, but I've definitely talked about it in podcasts before. And in the your choice in spouse is actually probably one of the more important choices you make in your whole career as it is. Because if they don't support what you do, you are fucked.
Yeah. So because I've been traveling like this for more than 10 years. So I'm gone from my family half the weekends of the year or more, which is why I don't practice all day. That way, while my kids were still young, I could be home. You know, I was in my office at like noon, three mornings a week, so I could get home, and my wife and I would go to all the soccer games and baseball games and all that cool stuff. And I was able to be there with my wife and my kids more than a lot of guys who are working all day and all week. So
right.
That's how I found that balance.
They're not most big. Chiropractors are under the impression that they have to be open during the whole day to accommodate their patients. But if you market yourself the right way, you can do the old field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And I think a lot of guys and gals do that wrong and miss out on a lot of those opportunities that Gregg gets to experience, like raising their family. You know, if you're only open the morning chiropractor, you can be the morning guy and still be booked.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. My wife's family were cotton farmers for many years, and her family has told me stories about the chiropractor that all the farmers would see. And so he had a farmer practice. So he was in his office he would see patients from about 6 in the morning till about 10 in the morning, and then he'd leave because all the farmers are farming. And
they're working by then, right?
Yeah. And then he would come back like at 6 o'clock in the evening and see a few of them between like 6 and 8 at night or something. And so we had the whole day in the middle, and that was beautiful. So I think you're absolutely right. And that's why a lot of chiropractors have always taken like 2 and 3 hours off in the middle of that lunch, because nobody's really coming in then. People can either come in, if they're working, they could come in before work or after work, or maybe on the lunch hour if they're close by. If they're retired, it doesn't matter when they come in. So I always tell people, schedule the retired people, schedule your Medicare people during slower times of your day when it doesn't matter.
The Medicare and the work comp, because the work comp guys aren't even working as it is. You know?
I've
heard that one. Yep.
My 3 mornings a week, I get to my office 2 of those mornings by about 6:45 in the morning, and I typically don't want to start seeing patients till about 9. So I have a couple hours to do other stuff. But whenever I tell somebody, hey, what time do you get there, Gregg? I'm like, well, I get there by 7 o'clock. Oh, can I come in then? Yeah, if you want. That's fine. And I'll have a few people come in really early like that, and I have no problem with that.
Well,
my dad has always started at 7:30, and we've continued that, and it's always 7:30 is a busy hour because people want to come in right before work. You know, we could see 24 people in that first 30-minute block, and they're out of here, and then it kind of slows down a little bit.
Yep, I agree.
There's a piece that'll give you hope right there. The hope is that you can design a lifestyle that you want out of this career.
That's right. I want to go surfing though. I want to learn how to surf. But yeah, I'm in Phoenix.
Yeah, right.
I haven't worked that out yet. I want to surf in the middle of it.
You got to have a lecture series constantly at on the beach in California. It's like a 4 or 5 week straight lecture series. California, you can get it done. Well, we already talked about spouses, and we've already talked about setting up life. Blake's about to have a kid.
You guys know Dr. Nelson, Landy Nelson?
Oh, Nelson. Yeah, Dr. Nelson. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which Nelson?
Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
Lanny?
Lanny?
Landy Nelson?
No.
Yeah, he used to be he's a really smart man, kind of a little bit of an abrasive personality.
I like him already.
Yeah. He said that your spouse, if the chiropractor is the main sole income, the spouse really needs to be like, does your spouse manage, right? Does the supporting role of the spouse and the chiropractor he had a really great outlook on that. I just thought it was interesting, but I don't want to talk about Landy too much.
Well, what happened to me was I had a serious girlfriend when I was at chiropractic college, and we lived together, and we were going to get married. And then there was a point where she was like, her dad was a dentist, and she was like, I don't want to be. She saw what was going on with her mom. Her mom had to be so involved in her dad's practice, and they ended up divorced. She was like, I don't want to be the doctor's wife. Was her sort of like her thing that she sort of said that was like, I don't want to be the doctor's wife. And I knew then that things weren't going to work out.
That's a red flag.
Yeah. And it was because we didn't last beyond that. but at that same time, if I hadn't heard the message from somebody, and maybe it was Lanny, but I doubt it, but somebody sent the message that if your spouse isn't on board with you, then you're going to have a hard time. And I probably heard that message either right before or right after that saying, and that sort of cued me to say, oh, that is a red flag, or I would never known it was a red flag.
I would totally agree with that. It's so critical.
Greg's discussion of your topic of your
all
choice.
afternoon. Are you guys talking all evening?
No, we have about 30 more minutes.
Well, I'm going to go. It was great chiming in, but I'm going to go eat some Indian with my pregnant wife.
That was about the most worthless visit, I think.
Good talking with you, Blake.
Yeah, that was fun, Blake. It was fun to pick up Chinese food with you. Okay, so we had that, and that's probably how fireside chats are going to go. Blake drops in, picks up Chinese food, and mentions Lanny Nelson, and then leaves.
So, Bobby, what have you found? What have you found in practice? So you were in California for a while first, kind of where you grew up, I think, and
right.
Then you moved to Oregon.
Right.
What have you seen? You've been in practice now for how long? 12 years or so?
12 years, yep. 13 in a couple months.
Okay. So what have you found have been your biggest challenges or some of your biggest wins or things that you're like aha moments, things like that? Interview you now.
It would be classifying myself as a person who always wakes up in the morning and thinks I don't know anything. So that's where everything starts from. I wake up each morning and say I don't know anything, and today's a new day to start and learn something. So I've never in these 12 years felt like I've reached any level of mastery, and that's where it sort of starts. So there have been multiple peaks where I've reached where I'm like, oh, here's something new. Oh, here's something new. Oh, something new. So from the California standpoint, if we want to go longitudinally, when I got into chiropractic college, I was on cruise control more or less because the practice that I was a CA in said you have a job when you graduate from school, so come on back. So all through chiropractic school, I was like, hey, I got a job, man. I don't know what you guys are all worried about. What's everyone scared about? I got a job to go to. And I remember I got out of school. I let them know, hey, I've got this, I'm graduating soon. I'll be back. They're like, great. We still got a job for you. I showed up and they said, well, we don't actually really have a job for you.
When we said job.
Yeah. When we said job, we didn't mean like actual job. We meant like you can still do our CA stuff for us. But they had a satellite office and they said, okay, so you can work in our satellite office. It's one room. Lots of doctors work out of one room. There's nothing wrong with that. I've been successful out of one room before too. And we'll pay you $500 a month. And even in 2005 terms, $2,005, that's $500 a month isn't like, even in 1960s terms, that probably wasn't enough. And I'm like, I don't think you understand, like, what is the $500? Well, that's your base. Then you make this certain money. I think it was like 40% of everything after. It was like the worst contract you'd ever seen. Where did you guys get this contract? Oh, well, the hospital we used to work at, this is how they did it with their physicians. So obviously they had no idea what they were doing. And I said, well, 40% of what was a good next business question to ask. Okay, 40% of what? Is it 40% of $1 million? Because I'm still in.
Yeah.
Or is it 40% of one patient, which was more of like what it was. They were seeing like two patients a day in their satellite office. So it's $500 plus 40% of two patients a day. So I said no. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and I said, and I got pissed, and I came home, and I was like, I could work for the best chiropractor, the busiest chiropractor in all of California. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's LA or San Francisco. I can work for whoever. And she just looked at me in the eyes. She goes, okay, do it. Like, she just dared me to do it. And so I joined in. I just became an associate with the busiest chiropractors in the Bay Area. And, they were PI mill guys, but they had like 5 or 6 clinics. And that's what I did. And my girlfriend was like, "Oh, you did it." So that's sort of where that started, was this thing of like, this sort of like, you can't do that type of attitude. But
How long were you there?
in the beginning, it was like a lot of people telling me you can't do that, when what they should have told me is you shouldn't do that.
Right.
So I used to do a lot of things out of spite, just to show them I could.
How long did you stay there?
I stayed there for a year. And then after a year, I had already had stock in the corporation. I had already moved from an associate chiropractor to doing a lot of the training and interviewing process of other young doctors that were going to come in. I moved from your standard PI exam doc to the guy running 2 of the 6 clinics. But he was doing like 60, 70 hours a week of work and getting paid not $500 a month, but definitely still not getting paid what I was worth. And I knew this the day I left, because the doctor was like, "Well, I'll double your salary and I'll give you a percentage in the entire corporation if you stay." And that just told me that's probably what I was worth in the first place, and you didn't respect it.
Mm-hmm.
So I sold my stock in the company, which was a nice little chunk, and moved back home to where I was originally supposed to be, with a multidisciplinary company that had all these things that the young chiropractors dream about having inside their clinic. And I tell them it's wrong, and they said, "Explain to me why it's wrong." Like, you guys want me to tell you like acupuncture is wrong, or an MD is wrong, or working with a physical therapist is wrong. It's not that. It's the people, and it's whoever's running the show. Because I walked into a clinic that had 3 MDs, 2 acupuncturists, physical therapists, 2 chiropractors, a family therapist, a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, an esthetician for beauty stuff, and in a store, a full-on store. You walked in and there was a full store of things to purchase, including like cups and gadgets and widgets and the most multidisciplinary thing you could possibly imagine. The lady who was running it was so bound up in her own personal ego of how she was king shit of fuck mountain that the MD left. The MDs they got to replace the MDs that left were completely incompetent. They'd run out to the hall and look on their at that time it was the BlackBerry. They'd look on the BlackBerry through the PDF to try to find the right prescription, the right diagnosis. They'd run out in the hall and do that. From the chiropractic standpoint, she was a DC, but she said, "You can do the chiropractic work. I'm going to run the business." But as soon as patients took much more favor to me than they ever would for her, she's like, "Psh, no, I've got to be the one. So don't give him any new patients. He'll do the PT stuff," because the PT quit. So he'll do the rehab stuff, and I'll do the chiro stuff. And then it was just little things like that where the personality stuff was the downfall. I always thought if you set up the perfect arc, like if you built the perfect arc, the animals would come and you'd float through the flood and you could last anything. But it's not what you build. It's not your technique. It's not how you approach things. It's the person who's running it. And she, I made friends. One of my best friends is a bank loan officer, and he loaned her the money to start her practice. And, by the time we became really good friends, he's like, that thing's not going to last much longer. We're taking it pretty soon. And we're taking her house, and we're taking her ranch, and we're taking her horses, and we're taking her BMWs. We're taking it all. So you might want to find a new place to live, work.
Wow.
And they did. They took all of her shit.
How long were you there?
About a year. So a year.
And then what did you do?
And then I talked to a friend. I was in a bad place, and I talked to a friend who had another multidisciplinary practice, and he's like, "You know what? It doesn't matter. None of this stuff is ever going to work until you just do it on your own. It's like you have your own office, whether it's 1 room or 2 rooms or whatever, and you just keep working and building your own client base." Said nothing matters until you have your own practice.
So did you start your own practice in California, or was that Oregon?
So that was there. That was in California. I joined his it was partially his multidisciplinary group, but as an independent contractor, and then just built from there. And eventually that place also failed. So every single multidisciplinary practice I've ever seen has failed. And they didn't really fail. They just saw the writing on the wall and they quit before they failed. They sold off all their assets and moved.
Why were they failing?
Too much, too many working parts that they didn't have control over. Too many things for sale. Too many pieces going around. Too many.
The overhead was too high, and the
Overhead was too high. The space was too immaculate. For the community. I mean, it was a small farming community. So the MD split off, and the MD said, "Will you come with me?" And I came with him, and we worked together for 7, almost 8 years.
How'd that go?
That was great. Now that was so this MD DC, that's a scenario where a multidisciplinary thing can work pretty well. Is where you've got like an MD DC, DC PT, DC acupuncture. Like where there's two people playing off of each other. If you read the CRISP protocols, what's in chapter 1? What does Don Murphy say right away? When it comes to back pain, the main problem is that people take a supermarket approach to it. They go to the DC, they go to the MD, they go to the PT, they try a little bit of stuff at the pharmacy. They'll try a back brace, they'll try resting, they'll try exercise, and they'll read the top 10 stretches for back pain on YouTube. They'll keep going through all this crap and take a supermarket approach to how they deal with their back pain. Well, people do that with all their health concerns. And what we were finding, or at least what I was finding in this multidisciplinary clinic, is like you would get a new patient that would be like, "I'm here for my ankle pain." We'll pick something. You go, okay. So we would do Gregg's technique. We would do an evaluation. We would not wait till the next day to treat. We'd say, "I think this is what you got going on here. This is what I want to do for you. Is that okay?" Sure. They'd do that for one day. Then you wouldn't see them for 2 or 3 days. Then the next thing you see them on the schedule for acupuncture. And then the next thing you see them on the schedule for the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. Or the next day they're on the schedule to the MD. So they were just shopping from place to place without any real true leadership. I see that in a lot of multidisciplinary practices where it's truly multidisciplinary, is that people are shopping all over.
Wow.
When it's just 1 to 2 to play off each other, it works a little better. Especially MD DC, because the MD knows when it's an MD thing and the DC knows when it's a DC thing.
So you were there for about 7 years, and then you left?
A couple different things happened all at once in that 7-year period. So I had grown my practice so that the MD DC practice was in a house. And the doctor occupied one room, and he had an exam room. And then there was an office. And then I occupied 2 rooms, kind of like a room and a rehab room. And that's when I discovered things like SFMA and the functional movement system and rehab, and even a very primitive version of the clinic gym hybrid model where you train patients. But long story short, I ran out of space really, really fast because I was doing that in chiropractic out of two rooms that would serve like treatment size rooms.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's in California, so I've got people carrying kettlebells up the hill outside, and we would go to the park that was about a block away, and we would do stuff out on the grass at the park. And, I tried to make it work as much as I could. And the MD had some great ideas of how he wanted to expand too, because he had all these goals, but when I presented him with actually taking action, he did not want to take action. He didn't want to expand. He didn't want to take any risk. Definitely an older guy, probably in his...
Careful now.
If at that time I'm still in my 30s, late 30s, he's probably in his mid 50s or so, but he's cool the way he is. He likes it how it is. So he didn't want to change anything. And at that same time, I met a lady, and we heard the bells of matrimony, and we started making our own babies, and she had her babies before then too. So there was also this sort of like, it wasn't just a financial decision to move to a bigger city. It was also a family decision because it's just a more affordable and better way to live for your children. But those happened at the same time.
Yeah. So then when you got to Portland, are you in a multidisciplinary setting now, or just on your own?
When I first got here, I was in a multi-DC setting. So part of my time in one office in one part of town, and part of my time in another office in another part of town. But right now, just most recently, I just opened my own office as a morning guy.
As a morning guy?
Yeah, I'm the morning guy. So I hate mornings, so there's nothing better to do in the morning because I would just piss my morning away anyways.
So do you have somebody else in there in the other parts of the day?
Yeah, I've got this Forward Thinking Chiropractic Alliance thing. No, what we're going to do, me and the wife, my wife's a personal trainer, is we're going to establish our own office across the river in a geographically separate place, closer to our home. And then that would be more of the evening thing.
So in your practice right now, you're still doing are you doing a lot of rehab and the SFMA and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. And it's so the practice we're in, and you guys, if you're moving to a big city, you can find places like this where they just rent out a room for a certain period of time. Or, you can even share a room with somebody. I have a list. I have a practice list. I have a couple hundred patients that are on a list. I can move to multiple places,
right, and
take my list with me, as long as I just don't completely offend them and move 20 miles away. I have a list of people that I can access and say, I'm over here and I'm over here and I'm over here. And online, you can schedule to see me wherever you want to see me under whatever category. So,
what hours of the day are you seeing patients?
They're set 7 a.m. to 1 p.m., mostly towards the end of the week. And then there's one day a week where I'm there all day.
Oh, no, all day?
Yeah. Well, of course, we got to have the chiropractic 2-hour lunch,
Right. Well, that's great. Good.
So it's more about designing a life.
I remember when I first got into the FTCA, I kept seeing people talking about SFMA, and I was like, what? I've never heard of that. What is that? It took a while before I don't know. I'm not sure what it stands for, but
it stands for
I see more and more people.
Selective functional movement assessment. It's just a way of looking at people. That's all it is. It's just a way of sort of looking at people and then just trying to come with or decide how you're going to treat them.
Yeah.
So it's as simple as saying, okay, so there's two ways to approach your problem. It's either a hands-on approach or an exercise approach. This assessment helps me decide which one's better. It's usually a combination of both, but it'll tell me which way to go a little more heavily.
Yeah. That's awesome.
What we wanted, of all this, so first of all, for like the forward-thinking doctor, there's got to be a way to be. There's got to be a way to project yourself as a professional, and that's where we start, is with that base level of psychology or that base level of being. Obviously, professional is part of it, but you don't want to be a tool as well. I don't know if we can train that out of some of these people, but you want to say, okay, there's a certain way of being, and that's patient-centered, probably ethical, empathetic, and all that stuff. And then there's a system you can lay on top of that. And there's a couple different systems of assessment, and which ways are the easiest ways to assess people, to make sure you make the right decisions when you actually treat them. And then after you've assessed, and then there's the treatment model, and then after the treatment model, there's all the internal marketing models and all these other things. But all these things are playable, where you should be able to plug and play all this stuff eventually and say, okay, here's who I am, here's what I like to do, what are the systems available to me that I can plug in and use. So that's what I try to do with this FTCA convention, is show some people some different things that they can plug and play that they might not have plug and played yet.
Yeah.
You don't really fit that model, because your part has to be plugged into all of it, which is good for you. That part has to be part of who the doctor is. That's the B part. You have to be a professional who documents what you're doing properly. That's not an option.
I was talking with Todd Riddle on the phone last week about something, I forget. And
barbecue.
We'd never spoken before, so we're speaking because I've never been to his seminars before, and I really wasn't quite sure what factor is. So I asked him on the phone, "Tell me what it is that you do. Tell me how you're documenting that. I want to see if that's right, or if there's a faster, more efficient way to do that, or how we incorporate that, we integrate that." And it was really interesting because I learned a lot. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that's what you did. That's cool. So that was really neat. Then, then I talked to guys that do a lot of, ART, or they do other types of rehab. I'm like, all right, how do we work this in there? But again, how do we communicate who we are or what we do to the rest of the healthcare universe? And that's critical. And because I want, one of the problems with our profession forever has been new patients. In fact, when we talk about and we whine about how these guys do these long-term care plans, and it's not a tour thing at all. It's just other chiropractors do that also. But why did that happen? That happened because many years ago, the consultants knew that chiropractors have always had a hard time consistently getting new patients. You get a bunch one month and then nothing. It was so up and down. So they figured, well, if we don't know where the new ones are coming from, we better keep and hold on to the ones that we have. And that's where those long-term plans came in. But I'm like, okay, so how do we fix that? How do we get past that? Because that's killed us. It's such a bad perception. And we've got to be able to figure out once and for all, how do we go more patient-centered? And what's interesting is I just did a seminar this weekend in Syracuse, and it was the first time that I really kept repeating the words patient-centered, 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 patient-centered. And I said, not doctor-centered, but what is in the best interest of our patients? And we've got to be able to do that. And our documentation is one of those. It sounds crazy because if you're old like me and you've been in practice as long as I have, all these guys from my generation remember when documentation was a complete non-issue. Nobody gave a rat's ass about it. Nobody ever looked. Nobody cared. And then it changed. And it changed everything. So we have got to figure out a way to navigate through that. But again, I know how we are. So we have to figure out how to do it quickly and efficiently and cost effectively and painlessly.
Yeah, it's visualized in really recently I was looking at buying a practice, and I even went into the ladies' practice and took my patients into her practice for a couple months. And she was 30 years in practicing. Personality-based practice, it could transfer over fine. There was a lot of upside to this practice for purchasing it. But I noticed a lot of things about her practice. One was that there was almost no marketing, so it wasn't like a marketing thing. And I'd imagine 30 years you don't have to do as much marketing as you do in the beginning. Like people kind of know, that chiropractor up the street on the corner there, they're going to do a good job. So go there. You don't have to know their name. People will just show up and be like, I was told just to come here. I don't know who I'm supposed to see. But so much of what she did was internal, was recall based. Was like, all right, I've been here for 30 years. I've got a patient list of like 500 billion people. Who's doing my recalls? I want you to do like 100 recalls a day, and they would do 100 recalls a day, and like 5 people would show up. And then, but eventually you'd see over and over again on these chart notes, like, do not call, do not call, do not call, do not call, because people get so burnt on being called that they don't want to be called anymore. But her notes were still paper, and she would use the whole thing to just write shit. Like there's a shit all over the page in the doctor scribble, even though it's got SOAP and it's got like a little diagram and it's got things you can circle. The whole thing was like written with stuff. And it was like, did you see my note where I wrote, I can't see shit on these notes. And it's like, how do you cut through the fat and tell people, like, not even me who works in the same office technically as you has any idea of what you're doing, let alone anyone else. But like you said, still getting paid. She doesn't care. She's been doing it for 30 years that way. Like, how do you even cut through fat like that and say you can't change them? But what if it wasn't me? What if it was somebody like an associate that came in and said, oh, well, Dr. Jones does it this way. And she gets paid. So this is the way I need to do it. I need to just write a bunch of shit all over the page and then we'll get paid. And then they write the shit. The checks come in and they go, oh, this is what I'm doing. I must be doing this right then. When do you say that is not the way to do it?
One of my favorite things is when these newer doctors in the group, when they private message me every now and then, they're like, could we talk on the phone? And I don't typically do phone calls because it's a very inefficient use of my time. But if I sense the angst enough, I'll agree to it. And I'll get these messages or these phone calls from these doctors, and they're like, so it's usually later in Florida or something, like, so I'm working for this guy and he has me doing this. Is that okay? And I'm like, that's so fucked.
Oh, we got a guest. Someone joined the party at the last couple minutes.
Who is that?
This is Kurt Kippenberger. He's going to be a speaker at the TED Talk on Friday at Forward KC. He's got a pretty interesting talk, actually.
Gregg's on.
He's going to talk about patient communication, so this is going to be great.
Awesome.
Hey, Gregg, how's it going?
So what Gregg was talking about is the people call in and they're always like, the guy I'm working for, is he doing this right? Of course he's not doing it right. It doesn't matter to him.
That's illegal, that's fraud, that's
But where are they going to learn it from? And to further broadcast myself, I've gotten a hold of one of my favorite people right now to sort of listen to is this guy. I get distracted with this stuff. Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson is a professor of psychology in Canada, and he just wrote a book called 12 Steps for Life, an Antidote to Chaos. So I'm taking Jordan Peterson's 12 steps and I'm converting them into 12 chiropractic steps of life, an antidote to chaos. And then one of them talks about how you treat your youth. Don't let your kids do things that are going to piss you off. And what we do is we get these kids, because that's what I want to call these students. They're kids. They don't know any better. They have no idea what's coming their way. And then we treat them like shit, and then we get mad at them. It's like you gotta have discipline, and you've got to be willing to tell them, no, that's wrong. You can't do it like that. And
grounded.
Yeah, these guys can't. They don't do it. They're just like, you want to work? Who will work for the lowest common denominator?
Yeah.
All right, you're good to go. And I get the same thing you do. I get the private messages. I got a private message from a young doc, and she was like, "Okay, so I'm going to graduate in a week. Where do you know anyone who's hiring?" I fucking talk to you right now, And it's like, shouldn't you have planned that out a little bit ahead of time, not a week before you graduate? And I'm like, no, I don't have any names. Don't have any names. It's like, well, what kind of things should I do? And I told her that I explained to her the difference between being an independent contractor and being an associate. At least I can go that far, and say, maybe you don't want to be an associate. Maybe you might want to consider being an independent contractor to start. And she goes, oh, wow, that's a very interesting thing. They never explained that to me in school. And I'm like punching myself in the head. I'm like, oh, my God. I'm sure they did at some point. You didn't show up, but okay. And then the last thing she says is like, well, there's this guy down the street that'll pay me $60,000 to work in his clinic. It's mostly personal injury. What do you think about that? I was like, delete conversation. What do you think I think about that? You're not making $60,000. And if you are, you'll be making it. You'll be making it. And it's like, if we can't treat these children right, we can't get mad at them at the same time. And that's from the schools to the people who hire people as associates, to the people who call themselves gurus, to the people who educate post-secondary. If you don't do it right, you can't be upset at the results.
Yeah. Kurt, what's your story? We've never met before.
Man, I grew up in middle of Missouri. I practice in Columbia, Missouri, so I grew up just about an hour and a half south of here. And went to Logan, graduated in 2010, opened my own private practice right out of school, and just getting ready to turn in 8 years of practice here in August. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of it at the very least.
Is it what you expected it to be?
In a lot of hands, yes. And, I would say clinically, yes. Business-wise, no. we've had a lot of good direction, a lot of good mentors, but I mean, there's so many curveballs that you get and things. So I guess, I mean, I fell into chiropractic. Chiropractic wasn't like, I didn't have one of those aha stories. I'd never been to a chiropractor growing up or anything like that. So I came to the University of Missouri with the intent of being a physical therapist, and their program was shifting from the MPT to the PT program, or DPT program at the time. And I looked at that and thought it was bullshit because their autonomy didn't change at all. And I thought that was really, really self-limiting as a profession. And we work with a lot of great PTs. I thought it was BS that somebody like me would have to write a script for them to be seen. So I kind of was all dressed up and no place to go. And I was an athletic trainer and an intern for the football team. And I had a buddy that went and visited Logan. And once I figured out that I could do all the things that I wanted to do as a PT, but I could write my own prescription, I signed the paperwork that day. So
Wow.
that was it.
What'd your family think?
My dad thought I was fucking insane. He was like, "You're gonna go $200,000 in debt and then open your own business?" I was like, "Yeah, sounds radical, right?" So, and you know, I mean, now I think I'm insane to a certain.
Right. What the hell have you done?
Yeah, but you know, it's gone well. Our practice is great. We've got usually we've been a 3-doctor practice for the last, I don't know, 4 years, I guess, 3 years. I've got one that just transitioned. I got a preceptor that starts on Thursday.
Right.
So those are the big surprises, like how to keep people happy, like Bobby was saying, like how to babysit the kids and like teach this generation to work hard. And you know, I fall into that. I'm 35. I fall into this generation, so I'm just right on the front end of it, where I still had jobs growing up as a kid, and I watched my dad work his ass off, and I'm hoping I'm working my ass off. So that's part of it.
Good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's got the
I've been
Tweety
to
Bird
your
thing going
podcast,
too.
so it's nice to officially get to have a conversation with you. So
It's the only reason he's here. It's like, Greg, I could pin Greg down. He'll answer my questions. So about this new electronic thing you got going on, Greg.
yeah, it's all right, man. Your software demos look good.
You have a name yet?
I do.
What's it called?
Bulletproof.
That's good.
That's
My
solid.
logo is this.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it should be fuck every other software.
Right. You know what's funny is that when I promote my seminars and I send postcards out, I can't say what I want to say, because you know, a lot of them, I've got college backing me and they have to approve it. They're like, you can't say that, you can't say that. So I'm speaking in October in Alaska at their convention.
Yeah.
And they asked me, they said, hey, we need a title for your talk. So I'm like, well, shit. My talk is called, they said, we need a little blurb to promote. I'm like, I kind of teach this, and this, and how to make documentation your bitch. And I said, and the executive director of the association replied back, and she's cracking up. She's like, oh my gosh. She goes, that's how we talk here. But she goes, I don't know that I can write that or say that. I'm like, I said, I dare you. I dare you. I said, I want you to present it to your board. I said, you can put an asterisk in there. I said, I dare you. She goes, I'm going to try it. That's how I would like to promote everything, but I just can't do that yet.
Yeah. That key word, yet.
Yeah. Well, now Bill Morgan, I'm speaking at Parker in Dallas, and he's like, we're gonna have a swear jar every time you say fuck.
Drinks on Greg all weekend long.
Get him swearing. That's what I'm gonna do.
Morgan's doing it, man. He's gonna have Stu McGill and you and
I am excited.
Josh Satterley.
I'm excited about what he's doing there. We had a long talk about it. I'm excited about what he's doing. I'm excited about what's happening at some of these schools outside this country, like
Yeah.
Zurich. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Southern Denmark. I mean, there's some of these guys. I just love hearing it. I think that's our future. That's our
What's
future.
happening?
Yeah.
It's happening. It's got to sort of push forward incrementally, and then at some point it becomes exponential.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
So I like what Dr. Morgan's doing. I like what we're doing. I like what evidence-based chiropractors is doing. I like what the ACA is doing. There's just so much to pull from right now.
Hey, Kurt, here's a question.
Got to get involved. What's that?
Kurt, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So you've been in practice now, what did you say, 8 years?
Yeah.
All right. So in the 8 years that you've been in practice, I will suspect that there have been turning points where it's rarely a straight ahead thing. It's
for sure.
go, then like that. What were some of those turning points for you that were like significant turning points where you either had to shift direction or you wanted to shift? What were some of those that really were meaningful?
My first big one was probably in the first like 6 or 7 months, and I mean, it was February, so whatever.
September, it was a Tuesday.
September, 5 months. It was February of 2011. We had just hired our first employee, and our working capital was tanked. There was no money left in the bank. My wife's cell phone got shut off. Our heat in Missouri got shut off in February, which it's cold here. And I mean, we were busy. Like we were, you probably heard the term like skinny fat. Like you get kind of fit, but you're still kind of not. We were skinny fat, but in the busy standpoint. And I mean, there wasn't any like one thing or one deal. I called my dad and I was like, Dad, I can't pay us. I can't pay Nicole, who is our employee, and I can't pay rent. Like one thing's got to give. I don't know what to do. And I can't not have her because we're skinny fat. We're busy, but I can't.
Right.
And,
how come we're busy? We have no money.
Yeah. So he lent me the $1,300 for rent that month. And that was probably like the biggest, like that was like a 180-degree shift of there's no more fucking around. You're not borrowing any more money. Like you're getting the shit going in the direction. And it's kind of some of the stuff, like I read Josh's stuff every day. I get his emails. One of his emails is either from earlier this week or it may have been today's. I can't remember. I kind of read them in groups of 5. It's like a book. And, instead of like, we were getting people well pretty quick, like most of our colleagues probably here at Forward do, but I was probably oftentimes over promising and under delivering. So I'd be like, hey, I'll fix this in 3 visits when really it might have taken 6. Right. And if I just would have said 8, I would have looked like a genius. And
right.
So that was one of the biggest things, was like just making sense of like, what am I really working with? Am I working with a soft tissue injury? How long does that take to heal? If I facilitate that healing, is that going to make a difference? And so my treatment plans became a lot more methodical. And then it just wasn't bullshit at that point. It was like, I'm pretty sure I can get you well in these amount of visits. If we get you better faster, we're going to make you, go out to whatever we do. I mean, we do some degree of preventative and maintenance care, and I've heard kind of your talks on that, Greg. And Bobby, I was just listening to your video actually right before I saw it. That's how I stumbled upon this Fireside Chat, which I do have an empty fire pit right there. There's a lot of ashes left over from the weekend. So we tried to do that model as well, and that was probably the biggest shift point. And then I would say the second biggest shift point was when we hired our first doctor to work alongside me. My confidence, for whatever reason, just went through the roof, and nothing else changed other than I had somebody else that A, was dependent upon a salary for me, but B, that I had to prove to be a good mentor and prove to, give this kid some direction. And I think those two are probably the 2 biggest, I guess, defining moments. I don't know if
that's awesome.
Yeah. There's probably a lot more.
I love
having 2 kids in that process. Those are defining moments, because then you're like, shit.
I love hearing that from people. I love hearing their stories, and I love hearing the turning points, because a lot of people, they think that they're the only ones that face shit, that
Right.
they don't, nobody else. I'm like, we've all been there. We've all had those moments where you're like, I don't know, I don't have enough gas in my car to get to my office, and I don't have any money or credit, or and that's when you start improvising, and that's when you start getting creative. And one of the things you mentioned, like with treatment plan, I think the key word there is plan, because
Right.
a lot of people have a treatment, but they don't think about the treatment plan per se. Because you're absolutely right. If you say, I'll get you better in 2 visits and it takes 4, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
But if you would have said, I get you better in 8 and it takes 6, you're like a miracle worker with that. And that's
Right.
huge. That's a huge thing right there. That's a huge thing.
Well, it's next level. I mean, a lot of people are hyper focused on what they're doing within the 4 walls of a single treatment.
Yeah.
They're so confined or so wrapped up in technique,
Yeah.
and how to do these sort of techniques, and what are they going to do with that 15 to 20 minutes that they have, that they don't even really think much about what's going on after that, the long-term aspect. It's like I don't know if it's like a process. Like when you first come out of school, you're so focused on that one technique moment, and then you get a couple of years under you and you're like, okay, so how am I going to manage this case?
Yeah.
And then
Right.
after a while you start saying, how am I going to manage cases and multiple cases? And then it sort of expands or scales from there.
And then what happens when you have 3 patients that throw grenades in the middle of your day, and they come in with like facial paralysis and weakness on a regular routine visit? Okay.
Well, what's the name of your practice?
Focus on Health. This is actually one of our first old t-shirts.
Good.
And we've rebranded. We've gotten rid of the papyrus, which I've been told by many designers is like the worst font you could ever use for anything. Mostly because it's a design nightmare. It's got all those little like cuts and serrations.
That's right.
But yeah. So, and oddly enough, Focus on Health was planted probably back in my undergrad. There was a book from my public health course called Focus on Health, and I dusted it off 3 years ago when we were moving. Well, no, it was longer than that. It was 2015 when we moved our office, and I was like, motherfucker, did this really like grow into a tree that I planted back in the day, or did I get like kind of subliminally coaxed into this name? One of the two. So.
Kurt, do you do much marketing for your practice, or how do people find out about you?
So my wife's done most of it over the years for us, and we've hired people to do it, and we've had some success with that. We use interns from the university a lot. I shouldn't say use. We utilize. Sounds a little bit better.
Would you mind showing us?
Like some of them. What's that? Would
you mind showing me an example of your Yellow Page ad?
Yeah. Here it is. Sorry.
So are they doing a lot of social media stuff, or what are they?
The interns, they'll go out. If we do external stuff, they'll help us with some external stuff. They'll set up like our table space. And when we go out like this, we did a thing a week or 2 ago at it's like a man show. So think of like ladies' night for dudes. Wasn't a real great venue, but we were going out doing like FMS screens, and we had cornhole golf there, which one of the people was like, this looks like cornhole but harder, and so that's what we ended up calling it, was cornhole but harder. And yeah, just kind of talking about some of the stuff. We've had doctors in the past that are like TPI certified and things like that, so we don't do a ton of external stuff, but most of it's like setting up meetings with our medical doctors and going out to lunch with those folks. And they do a little social media stuff. We use Kyrospark, so we have Blake help us out with that, and Krista does a lot of stuff with that.
I think everybody should be doing that.
Yeah, Blake's
not trying to promote Blake, but I think that is so compelling.
Yeah. Blake's an intense dude from the few interactions that we've had, and but he really, really gets what he does with marketing. And like, we've gone through seasons where I feel like our Facebook is really strong, and then it just peters out. Like we were in a peter out phase before we hired Blake, and we're just now rebuilding it to where I would say it's getting stronger. We have some of the Chiro Up content coming through on now as well, and I've been developing more organic content again. And that's been the hardest thing, is just like having 2 different kiddos over the last 6 years. Like my content's been a roller coaster. So
yeah, kids ruin everything, I swear.
yeah, they're sweet as peaches until you have to go with the money.
Damn it.
So yeah, you know, I would say the marketing, you know, we've done a lot of different things. I mean, we've spent upwards of $3,000 a month on radio before, and some months it produces, and some months it's just like, what the fuck are we doing it? So we don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
We've done print ads, we've done all sorts of stuff, and we've seen a lot of marketing dollars go out and not a lot come in because
Let's check this out. I have a friend, I won't say what state, but he's not a chiropractor.
Mm-hmm.
He was an entrepreneur, but he's always loved chiropractic.
Yeah.
And he retired in his early 40s and stayed home for a year and a half. And his wife kicked him and said, "You got to get a job or something."
Yeah.
He was involved in chiropractic consulting groups, even though he wasn't a chiropractor, because he loved it so much. And he was thinking,
and it's easy money.
Yeah, he was thinking about becoming a chiropractor, and they said, "No, don't. You're a good businessman. Do your thing." So he found a state where there are some states where a non-chiro can own a chiropractic practice.
Oh, right.
And Arizona is one of those states. But he went to a different state, opened up an office, and started doing it as a businessman, and just crushed it. Crushed it. I flew out there to do a private seminar and consulting with his office one day, a number of years ago, and he had 7 chiropractors working for him. His lead chiropractor, the main one, was paid a salary of $350,000 a year.
Wow.
He had 5 associates that were making $60,000 right out of college, all because they needed to be able to turn on the electrical machine. It had to be the doctor doing that. So he told me about their advertising. I said, "How much are you spending a month in advertising?"
Mm-hmm.
And he said, $40,000. I said, $40,000 a month in advertising.
Holy shit.
And I said, what? And I mean, he had every TV, radio, billboard, everything like that. But they were doing, I mean, this is a number of years ago, they were doing, it was all on decompression. So they had like 10 decompression tables. All their ads were decompression. And I got in his face and I said, "Oh yeah, but did you ever try spending $40,000 a month just on the chiropractic stuff, just that part?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, how did that work out?" And he said, "Well, from our $40,000 a month on decompression advertising, we averaged 200 new patients a month. When we did it just for the chiropractic, we'd be lucky to get 20 new patients a month."
Wow.
$40,000 a month. Oh my gosh.
That's unbelievable.
So you got to find your thing. You've got to find your groove.
Right.
And do that. And for some people, it's going to be the SFMA or the FMS. So look how I know these letters now. For some people, it's going to be sports stuff. For some, like for me, I find myself doing more exams. So I do exams for other chiropractors. Stuff and my time is I do impairment exams for a workers' comp out of Ohio. So I did an exam this morning on a woman, and they're very, very focused, very, very quick exams. And I did an ankle exam today that literally took 3 minutes. It was a 3-minute exam. It took me longer than I wanted to do the report. It was about 15 minutes. I have to find a way to cut that down a bit. But it's, the amount of money that I'm paid for that is so ridiculous for that amount of time that I spent. That's a good use of my time. So I do that, where when I see other patients in my state of Arizona, insurance reimbursement is practically zero.
Yeah.
We have everything's managed through American Specialty Health. So I can get 26 or 27 bucks for an adjustment. Like I can't even if I do rehab or things like that, all I'm doing is jacking up the patient's copay, because I won't even get past the copay. Or if I do get past the copay, it's like $5 past the copay. In the meantime, the patient had to spend the extra money for that. So I have to figure out what is the most not only how do I get these patients well
Right.
quickly and cost effectively, but what is the most cost effective use of my time also? And that when you've been practicing long enough and you start understanding the business aspects of this, and so unfortunately we have to think like that, but we do have to think like that. We do. I had a doctor from New York one time say to me, Greg, I don't know what to do. So what's up? She said, I have a different business model. I said, tell me about it. She said, I spend 2 hours with each patient. I said, what are you doing for 2 hours? Oh, I do a lot of muscle work and massage. I'm like, I said, you better be getting paid like $600 at least per treatment. Are you? She said, no. I said, how much you getting paid? She goes, like $40. You could work at Target for, I said, okay, now look, here's the thing. Are you doing this because you're independently wealthy and this is your way to give back to society and it's your missionary work?
Expensive hobby, yeah.
Yeah. Or are you out to try to have a business? She goes, no, I have to have a business. I said, well, this is a non-viable business model. This will not and cannot work the way that you're doing it unless you're able to have people pay you such a crazy amount of money, which is possible, very unlikely, but possible. But you've got to, I said, this is not going to work.
That's what Gregg Rose would do with the SFMA. You know, there's so many practitioners that say, how do I make this all fit into a one visit? You don't, but that's what Gregg Rose did. He would see this one person and that person would pay $600-700 a visit.
Right.
And they would not leave Gregg Rose's care until he was done with them. They could stay there all day. They could be there all weekend, you know, so, but he got paid what he was worth. And I had an old friend in the FTCA that always told me, you start everything with how much are you worth per day or per hour? And then you set up everything else based on that. If you think you're worth $1,000 a day and you're seeing Medicare patients, no offense to Medicare, it's a great program.
Right.
You got to see $1,000 worth of Medicare patients within that day. So how many is that? Like 100? You know, you gotta find out what you're worth during a day or during an hour or whatever, and then you backfill that, you reverse engineer that. Now, someone like a Gregg Rose could see $600 or $700 a visit type of day or person because he was following the Tiger Woods trend, and everybody wanted to be with Gregg Rose, the golf guy. And everyone was willing to pay $600 or $700 for a visit with time with Gregg Rose.
Yeah, I've told some doctors in the group a story where, I have a patient who's a billionaire, and for 10 years I traveled for him. So I have portable adjusting tables in 4 locations around the country.
Oh my God!
Wherever, whenever he would want me, I would pick up and go. So his primary residence is his $34 million penthouse apartment in Midtown Manhattan, or his office in Charlotte, or office in Florida, or his condo in Santa Monica, California. And I would just go wherever. Usually I would go to New York City twice a month, usually to see him. Before I did this for him, he asked me, when he was asking me to do this for him, this is exactly what he said. Greg, how much is a day worth to you?
Yep, there it is.
And I said, what? He said, how much is a day worth to you? Well, I had to figure this out in like 10 seconds.
Right.
Right. And I'm thinking to myself, is that a Medicare day? Is that a PI day? So what I did in 10 seconds, I figured, okay, how much, let's say I had a practice that was grossing $1 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And let's say my overhead was 50%. So I'm netting $500,000 a year. Okay. And then I just reversed engineered it. And I just cut it back. And I told him a day is worth this much to me. And he said, done. I'll pay you that much plus your expenses for that. And then I wanted to say, damn it, I should.
That's why you're a billionaire.
And he did that. And it was such a fascinating way to think of it. And ever since then, I guide myself, my life on that. So when somebody says to me, hey, can you do this for me? Or will you speak at this? You know, what is that going to be? Oh, you want me for 4 hours? That's this much. I base it all on what is a day worth to me? And I'll fit you in.
Plus, it allows you young docs who do need a side hustle, who will probably need a side hustle at some moment, to fill in the blanks of what your practice is giving you for that amount versus how much you need to side hustle with your Uber driving and all that other stuff. So,
right. Think about it. How much is a day worth?
How much is a day worth to you? Yes.
A great
we are going to finish. We're going to stop talking, or at least I'm going to stop talking, and I'm going to leave. You guys can talk if you want, or if it's going to be that kind of party. But we're going to stop our first fireside chat now. Thank you guys very much for attending. This is going up on the members only portion of the FTCA website, which is forwardthinkingchiro.com. That's my only plug for the day. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you very much, Greg, for flipping the script on me.
Thank you, Bobby.
And thank you to Blake Kalkstien for your Chinese food order. That was very nice.
I'm glad I stumbled upon it. It was on Facebook. I just clicked the link, so it was solid.
Buddy. I think that's how we'll do it from now on. We're just going to say I'm going to have my fireside.
That's good idea.
And the first 2 or 3 people that show up, that's it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right.
Cool.
See you guys
later.
All right. Bye.